Welcome to Live Well, Dream Big. I'm Suzanne Monroe, founder of the International Association of Wellness Professionals, where I've been teaching people how to live a life of wellness, tap into their passion, and go for their dreams for over 15 years. I believe living well and dreaming big starts with ourselves. This podcast will show you how to create a healthy, holistic life, empower your mindset, follow your dreams, and make a big impact. Let's dive in right now. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Live Well, Dream Big. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode. Today, we have a special highlight episode where we're featuring some of our top wellness tips from the year before. You know, we spoke with tons of holistic health experts over the last year, and I really wanted to bring together some of their top tips to really help you as you get ready to start a new year. You know, because for many, the new year is a time of focusing in on intentions and resolutions and those goals. And I hope these tips can empower you as you start out a new year. So first up, we're kicking off the episode with holistic nutrition and hearing from experts who really have some different opposing points of views on what we should be eating. We're first going to hear from Dr. Michael Greger, who is a plant-based diet expert and author of the How Not to Die series, and really an authority into how we can incorporate more whole foods into our diets. Then next, we'll hear from Dr. Frank Lipman, who's a wellness pioneer, and he claims that there's no one right diet for everyone, and that what we eat should actually be personalized to the individual. Following that, you'll hear from Dr. Brett Scher, who came to us to talk to us about keto diets, which are kind of on the other side of the fence from plant-based diets. But he also discusses mindset and wellness and even the critical role that wellness coaches play in helping people to achieve their goals. After that, we're going to transition into a short discussion on better sleep and better breathing and how that relates to sleep. You're going to hear from Molly McLaughlin, who's a sleep expert, and some of her top tips that she shared about really aligning with our natural biological circadian rhythm so that we can really achieve the best night's sleep. And then Patrick McEwen, who is talked about the importance of proper breathing and how that really impacts our sleep. And then finally, we're going to end this highlight with a discussion hearing from my own personal functional medicine doctor, Dr. Tiffany Mullen, who talks about how traditional medicine is very different than functional medicine and how we also really need to keep an eye on some of these things like our hormones, our thyroid and cortisol levels, and how those impact our energy every day. You know, it was so much fun putting these highlights together for you so you could really get these top wellness tips, and I hope they help you as you start out your new year ahead. All right, without further ado, let's dive in. Most of our listeners here know what it means to have a plant-based diet, but many listeners might also be new to this. So because terms evolve a little over the years, you know, you may have heard of being a vegetarian or vegan. Tell us, does plant-based mean that you have entirely eliminated any foods like meat, dairy, anything that does not come from a plant? Let's just all get grounded on what we're talking about here.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm so glad you brought that up because there's a lot of misconceptions out there. It does not matter what you eat on your birthday, holidays, special occasions. It's really the day-to-day stuff that adds up. And on a day-to-day basis, the best available balance of evidence suggests that we should try to minimize our intake of meat, eggs, dairy, and junk and maximize our intake of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, which are beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils, nuts and seeds, herbs and spices, mushrooms, basically real food that grows out of the ground. These are our healthiest choices. And the more we can center our diets around them, the better.
Well, thanks for clarifying that. And I love you share a story in your book. There was a man who said, okay, I can't go plant-based because I'm going to miss either was his mother or grandmother's chicken noodle soup too much. And you were like, that should not stop you from eating more fruits and vegetables.
Eat all the chicken noodle soup you want, but that doesn't mean that you can't eat oatmeal the next morning for breakfast.
I love it. So, you know, we're talking about going plant-based. You say in your book that the number one killer is heart disease and that plant-based eating is really the only evidence-based approach proven to reverse that. So with that being said, and what you said earlier about the medical community, why isn't the medical community talking about this more? You know, they're waiting to hear from a patient about it. Are we making any progress? Have we made any progress in the last 10 years with adding more evidence-based nutrition to our curriculum or what doctors are presenting to patients?
Yeah, you know, doctors have a severe nutrition deficiency in education, right? Many doctors are just never taught about the power that nutrition could have on the course of illness. And so they graduate without this powerful tool in their medical toolbox. Now, look, there are also institutional barriers, time constraints, lack of reimbursement. In general, you know, doctors here in the States are simply not kind of paid to help people take better care of themselves. Of course, drug companies also play a role in influencing medical education and practice. We can, ask your doctor when's the last time they've been taken out to dinner by Big Broccoli. It's probably been a while. But, I draw a parallel with smoking. By the 1950s, we already had literally decades of evidence starting back in the 30s linking lung cancer and smoking, but it was ignored. Why? Because smoking was normal. Most doctors smoked. The average per capita cigarette consumption, 4,000 cigarettes a year, meaning the average person walking around smoked a half pack a day, right? The American Medical Association was encouraging everyone to smoke in moderation. So there was this disconnect between the science and public policy. And it took more than 25 years and 7,000 studies before the first Surgeon General's report against smoking came out in the 60s. And so we're in a similar place today, where there's this overwhelming mountain of evidence showing us the best way to eat, but that's just not the normal way to eat. And unfortunately, we're not sticking to the science. But until the system changes, we can take personal responsibility for our own health and the health of our patients. Until the society catches up, we need to take the first steps because it literally is a matter of life and death. I encourage people to check out the True Health Initiative, which is truehealthinitiative.org. It's like the IPCC of nutrition, where Dr. David Katz, the head of the Yale Prevention Research Center, brought together hundreds of the top nutritional professionals in the world, like Walt Willett at Harvard, all on a list, to agree to a consensus statement as to what is the healthiest diet. No surprise, it's a diet centered around whole plant foods.
It's nice to see some consensus because there are so many kind of conflicting views out there. And I got to say this, Dr. Yeager, in all transparency, in a couple upcoming episodes, I'm also going to be interviewing some experts who say that eating a keto diet or even a paleo diet, focusing on animal protein, higher fat is the way to go. The reason I'm doing this, by the way, is because I do think people are utterly confused, because there's so much information at our fingertips today, articles, experts who have, conflicting information, I guess, when it comes to what to eat. I'm not sure having these different episodes is going to clear anything up for people, but let me ask you this. And by the way, I will make sure that I ask them this as well. What do you say to those other experts who believe eating keto or paleo diets are really the way to go, especially for people who want to lose weight? Because you do hear that a lot when it comes to weight loss specifically.
Yeah. So, I tell people, don't listen to me. Don't listen to them. Listen to the science, right? Anytime anyone tells you something, you say, well, wait a second, you weren't born with this information. Where'd you get it from, right? Did you get it from some checkout aisle magazine? Or was it, based on the peer-reviewed medical literature, which is the gold standard in terms of what we know about anything in life. And so when it comes to something like, buying a toaster on Amazon, yeah, some random opinion from some stranger in a review may actually be beneficial for you. You actually may take that into account. But when it comes to something as life and death important as the health and well-being of your family, what some schmo says at the gym, you're actually going to change your life. That makes no sense, right? We're literally talking about the leading killers. So if there's ever a decision in life that we want to be based on the evidence, the best available balance of evidence, let it be the health of our family. And so you go to the literature, and there's, again, only one diet ever proven to reverse our number one killer of both men and women, heart disease. Look, that should be it. What else do you need to know? No one else. No other diet can purport to say anything like that. And in fact, can the keto diet help you lose weight? Absolutely. You know what else can help you lose weight? A good meth habit. Tuberculosis will do it. Chemotherapy will do it. The goal to weight loss is not to fit into a skinnier coffin.
Well, at least somebody is out there spending the time going through all the articles and the evidence, because that must be taking you a lot of time to do. So we're grateful for that. As I mentioned, I've been reading your book, taking in your nutrition tips for the last week or so. I consider myself a pretty healthy person, having been in the wellness field for the last 15 years or so now. But you know what? I think we can all get stuck in our ruts, eating the same food, forgetting to get the right amount of certain fruits and vegetables. So I've had a lot of fun with your tips. As I said, I'm drinking my tart cherry juice, eating some goji berries, and my son is now eating seaweed. So that is pretty exciting.
Fantastic. Congratulations. Yeah.
Well, and I love the tools and tips you provide. I think the daily dozen checklist, it helps people stay on track for the day. We had a question coming in about this. Like, what are some suggestions for people who want to go plant-based for the first time? Should they go all in? Should they do it gradually? Is there any specific tools that you think are helpful for them? What are your thoughts on going cold turkey?
The most important thing is sustainability. It doesn't matter what you eat today or tomorrow or next week. But what you're eating for the next few decades, right? So you have to do it whatever pace will enable you to stick with it forever. For a lot of people, that means let's start with a good healthy breakfast, and then the rest of the day we need whatever, and then we move on to lunch, and we can slowly kind of make the transition. For some people, that's the way to do it, because then you got to find things that you love the taste of, that are convenient, that are easy for you, that you enjoy. At the same time, the slower you go, you're not going to feel the effects. You're not going to experience the benefits, or at least not for a while. And so that's why, if you're able, I encourage people to really jump in. There's this wonderful resource called the 21-Day Kickstart Program. It's at 21daykickstart.org. It's entirely free, starts the first of every month. Hundreds of thousands of people have done it. It's done in a bunch of different languages. And so you kind of join as kind of a social media group, and you get daily tips and recipes and motivation. The hope is you dive in 100%, but just for 3 weeks. So it's like you tried like a free trial. I used to recommend this to my patients all the time because it's hard for them to imagine a life without pepperoni pizza. But I said, no, we're just talking 3 weeks. Give me 3 weeks. And the hope is by the end of those 3 weeks, going all in, that you will feel so much healthier, better sleep, better digestion, less painful periods, whatever it takes. And then by the end of the 3 weeks, you have that internal motivation. It's no longer a doctor wagging their finger at you. Your own body is telling you that this is the way to go. And that can help give that extra motivation to really stick with it long term.
I love that, because we have to try things out. We can't just take the advice from someone else. We have to actually experience it. So that makes total sense.
The science is, depends who you follow. The paleo people will give you all the science about the paleo diet is best, and the plant-based people, and they're all full of crap, because there's no one way. Each diet has its pros and its cons. There is no one right diet. And once again, anyone who tells you that their way is the only way is full of crap. You do need to find your own way. And your own way is seeing how you feel, how your blood markers are, and just, you need to be smart about it. Unfortunately, that is a harder thing to do. And doctors don't know anything about diet. So you've got to, you guys as health coaches and as wellness coaches need to understand that, you need to personalize people's programs. There's no one way to exercise either. You got to find, there's no one way to meditate. You got to find what works for each particular individual. And, I know I use myself as an example because I experiment with myself and then I try it on my patients. But I remember when I was eating basically a vegetarian diet, I was having fish, lots of whole grains, lots of that was I was promoting as an holistic doctor. And I was sort of putting on weight, and I just wasn't feeling well. And as soon as I started eating meat again, and I cut out the grains and I cut back on fruit and went on a paleo diet, not only did I lose weight, but my numbers got better. I felt so much better. Now, it was such a stark contrast. It was so obvious. And I hear that so often. And for someone to come and then tell me that their plant-based diet is right for everyone is nonsense. Whereas my wife is a perfect example. When she tries to eat paleo, it just doesn't work for her. She can't metabolize as much fat. You got to find what works for you or for your patients. It's as simple as that, or as difficult as that. And anyone who tells you anything else, once again, is full of crap.
Well, again, you're speaking our language. We have a philosophy here at the IAWP, which is, we say, be the guide, not the guru. And it really is about helping people to discover what works for them versus trying to be that expert and telling them that there's only one way. So I love what you're saying. I think it's so interesting. Let's talk a little bit about mindset too when it comes to health, because first of all, we love mindset here in our community. We spend a lot of time learning about it, talking about it, coaching about it. And it's so essential to really have the right mindset if we want to transform our health and our lives. And you say that without the right mindset, all the knowledge in the world is not enough.
Yeah. And this was, again, another area that you don't learn about it as a physician. And it's so frustrating. I mean, holistic health practitioners, health coaches, so much more about the mindset than 99.9% of the physicians. And so when I took the behavioral modification certification and learned more about this, and then read the book by Carol Dweck about mindset, it was really eye-opening to me about this is probably the most important thing, and more important than even what what science you're citing, or what articles you're referring your patients to, but helping them get their mindset in the right place to succeed. This applies to nutrition and exercise and lifestyle and wellness. It applies across the board. And simple things like creating your goals, understanding your goals, displaying it in a prominent way, having accountability partners, finding ways to keep yourself on track with short-term goals, getting yourself towards the long-term goals so you get that positive reinforcement. These things that sound so small, but then when you put it into practice, you realize it really is a big deal, and it's challenging for a lot of people, but can help people so much more than just telling them what to do. And I mean, that's a training that's sort of sorely lacking among physicians. And that's another reason why I think it's so important to talk about and promote.
Yeah, well, you're speaking our language here. I know I see some folks nodding their heads out there because we have a saying over here called transformation, not information, which, yeah, there's all this information you can dump out and give to people, but the real transformation occurs from the things you're saying. Having that support, having that accountability, having the right mindset, all those pieces that really are what makes the difference to somebody actually making the change and the transformations.
And not that every doctor needs to be an expert in this, but I think every doctor needs to be aware of the importance of it. And that's why I think these multidisciplinary teams, doctors working with health coaches who have this experience and have the time and the expertise to work with the patients on this. That's why I think it's so important. And that's, when I opened that wellness center, that's what I was trying to create, to have that multidisciplinary approach to really help people succeed.
I love that, right? It's like you have your support team on your wellness team, right? And those are the people that help you to kind of getting to where you want to be.
I think the important thing about this is when we say so many of us we're struggling with our sleep, it kind of becomes like, well, that's how life is. And there's stats behind this. So the World Health Organization in 2016 found that the average person in the West was spending on average about 90% of their day inside. Now, the reason that this is important is that so many of these things, these time givers that we're speaking to entrain your circadian rhythm, come from being outside, being out in nature. So now that many of us are living a bit more like zoo animals, arguably, and inside and devoid of these cues that we can speak more about, that's part of the problem that is relating to this inability to kind of have a sensing of knowing what time it is and what our body needs to be doing and when. And by the way, that was in 2016. That was before a lockdown, before a lot of changes, more remote working. So you could make the argument that many of us are even spending more time inside. So what we need to do to interrupt that is to really create what we would have been naturally exposed to thousands of years ago, which would have been these elements so very, very clearly. So we spoke to light timing being so important. So you want to get as much of that dosing of light throughout the course of the day, looking to those lux readouts on the apps, seeing how much you can get of that. You want a very high amplitude of bright light exposure throughout the course of the day. I've seen some clients wearing darker blue blockers during the day, and that can be confusing for the body because we want to be getting as much of that full spectrum light, ideally, which does include blue light during the day. So you want to get that with that high amplitude, but then in going into the evening, you want to markedly drop the amount of light that you're exposed to. I had an anthropologist on the podcast that would argue for his students every single year, and very few people would take him up on this, which was to do the candlelight challenge. So that for at least 2 weeks, you are after sunset using nothing else beyond just candlelight for your lighting. And for the people that actually would do it, the few students that really would do that, they would often find, wow, I get tired way earlier. It's just so crazy. I'm sleeping longer throughout the course of the night. I mean, it's just what feels like a small change can yield a really big difference in our melatonin production in the evening. So one, you could play with that. Two, if you've kids or concerns around candles, you can do red lights. So we've got like red lights going on here, different things that you can do to shift your environment on the front end. But then on the back end, this can make a huge difference in your sleep quality. So that's still in that domain of light. And then after that, temperature is one of the next ones. So you want to look at your ambient temperature. If we think about this from an evolutionary perspective, if we were living outside, the sun would rise. And then with the presence of the sun, then the temperature would go up in the space. So these two cues together would tell your body, like, okay, clearly this has got to be the start of the day. Now, many of us just keep the same static temperature in our space, same static light exposure. So by changing these and bringing more of this clear change, that can really help guide the body. But then we can get into some of the other things that further are nestled under temperature that affect your temperature, like that meal timing, exercise timing, thought timing, drug timing, like coffee, alcohol, THC, or others. Many of those things will also change that body temperature.
Well, I love it because you're like talking about going back to the time of our ancestors. And there's like this real sense of like, I'm picturing myself going around with candlelight tonight. But that and like this whole idea of Mother Nature really does heal. Like there's something to be said about how things were done. But my question for you around all that is like, is that really doable for people living in the world that we are today? I mean, it seems like it's a necessity because I know you talk about sleep deprivation being really at an all-time high. What's going on with sleep deprivation and this being such a big deal? Sleep is such an important wellness topic, right? I mean, there's so much information out there about sleep though, and yet tying it into breathing and how we sleep is, I think, new to a lot of people. So I'm really excited we're diving into it because it's not always the first thing that you think of when you want to improve your sleep. So I'm really glad we're talking about that topic today.
I think it should be the first thing that we should be thinking about. It's really breathing and functional breathing in and out through the nose as being the elephant in the room when it comes to helping with sleep disorder breathing. The very foundation of good breathing patterns is in and out through the nose. The mouth has no role whatsoever when it comes to breathing. Is there any part of the mouth that is dedicated to conditioning the air as the air is drawn into the lungs? And the answer is no. All of the functions when it comes to the breath are implied by the nose. By breathing through your nose, the air that's drawn into the body is slowed down. And this is very important for mental states, especially the exhalation. On the other hand, mouth breathing is faster breathing because the resistance to breathing is less during the day through the mouth than it is through the nose. Now, during sleep, mouth breathing imposes a resistance to your breathing that's 2 to 3 times that of the nose. So you are more likely to have sleep disorder breathing by breathing through the mouth during sleep. So mouth breathing is faster breathing pattern, and it's also a shallow breathing pattern. And if you look down at your chest, and if you take the breath in through your mouth, you will typically see that mouth breathing engages a higher breath, that you're breathing more using the upper chest. Now, when it comes to states, when we breathe fast, and especially in the exhalation, as would happen during mouth breathing in rest and sleep, the brain interprets that the body is under stress. And maybe the best way to understand functional breathing patterns is to ask, how would you breathe when you get into a difficult situation? Because if we respond to a difficult situation by breathing hard and fast, the brain is going to interpret that the body is under stress. And all the brain wants to do is protect the body and to get the body out of there. It's not a time for conscious planning and decision-making. It's a time of fight or flight. Now, the same happens during sleep. When we breathe hard and fast during sleep, the brain interprets that the body is under stress and we are aroused from deeper sleep. So we're more likely to have light sleep when we breathe hard and fast. And this can manifest as insomnia. So how should you breathe? Well, if we get into a difficult situation, it's important to be able to bring attention onto the breathing and to breathe in and out through the nose. It's not just about breathing in through the nose, but it's also about breathing out through the nose. There are no animals on earth who are going around breathing in through their nose and out through their mouth. If it was so useful to breathe out through your mouth, surely nature would have equipped us with that breathing mode, and especially in the natural kingdom. It has not happened. There are only 2 or 3 animals on earth, and you can imagine of all of the species throughout the world, there are only 2 or 3 animals who actually mouth breathe. One is a dog. And the purpose of that is to regulate the body temperature by bringing air across the tongue so that the dog can cool down. Diving birds, penguins, and gannets can mouth breathe. Healthy animals, including farm animals, will always nasal breathe in and out. So the nose is there to protect the upper airways. The nose and the throat and the lungs are protected by breathing in and out through the nose. But if we take cold, dry, unfiltered air into the lungs, moisture is sucked out of the throat, moisture is sucked out of the lungs, we have a harder and faster breathing pattern, and this changes states. If we are breathing through an open mouth, we typically breathe fast and shallow. Fast and shallow breathing is trauma to the upper airways. This contributes to inflammation in the upper airways, narrowing of the upper airways, and is more conducive to collapse. By breathing through the mouth, it reduces lung volume. And as there is a reduction of lung volume, the throat collapses more easily during sleep. By breathing through the mouth, the tongue has to be low or midway in the mouth. And as a result, the tongue is more likely to encroach on the airway, to reduce airway diameter, to increase the risk of sleep disorder breathing. In terms of sleep disorder breathing and obstructive sleep apnea specifically, the environment has changed since 2013 when a researcher called Denny Eckhart, he recognized that obstructive sleep apnea is not primarily an anatomical issue, that there are 4 characteristics or 4 phenotypes in sleep apnea. One is anatomical, but 3 of them are non-anatomical. The anatomical dimension in sleep apnea is called peak rate. And this is the pressure at which the airway or the throat can collapse. You don't want your throat collapsing at a low suction pressure. You need your throat to be able to withstand a higher suction pressure. How can you help to open the diameter of the upper airway during sleep, nose breathing, correct tongue resting posture, and also breathing using the diaphragm because of the connection between the diaphragm and the upper airway? The second phenotype is called loop gain. And loop gain can be measured or recognized by the length of time that you can comfortably hold your breath during the day. Individuals with high loop gain, they breathe faster and they breathe harder, and they have an increased chemosensitivity to the gas carbon dioxide. And it means that if they stop breathing during sleep, that as they stop breathing, of course, carbon dioxide is going to increase in the blood, and individuals with high loop gain have exaggerated ventilation to minimal increases of carbon dioxide. And I'll just quickly go through the last 2 phenotypes. One is called arousal threshold, and this is the propensity to wake during sleep. Are you a light sleeper? And if you're a light sleeper, we would call it insomnia. There are 2 times that insomnia can manifest. One is the difficulty falling asleep. This is often due to hyperarousal or due to worries and stress and an inability for the person to downregulate before sleep. And the second time that insomnia can manifest is due to harder and faster breathing during sleep or a disruption to their sleep, such as snoring or obstructive sleep apnea. We can influence loop gain because we can reduce the chemosensitivity of the body to carbon dioxide by changing breathing patterns. We can influence peak rate by having the mouth closed and the tongue resting on the roof of the mouth to help open up the airway, and also with diaphragmatic breathing to help increase lung volume and cause a stiffening of the throat. We can help to reduce what's called low arousal threshold or insomnia by giving the person the ability to bring a balance in their autonomic nervous system to dampen the sympathetic response and increase the parasympathetic drive. And finally, the 4th phenotype is called upper airway recruitment. How do you get the upper airway dilator muscles to do their job during sleep? They are influenced by nitric oxide, which is an endocrine messenger, and you harness nasal nitric oxide by breathing in through your nose, also by humming or by breath tolling. And also carbon dioxide has an influence on the upper airway dilator muscles. So that's obstructive sleep apnea. And how you breathe during the day is going to influence how you breathe during sleep. And if you have a habit of breathing harder and faster in upper chest and mouth breathing during the day, you are going to breathe harder and faster in upper chest during sleep. And that's going to increase your risk of sleep disorder breathing. So the mantra should be is to breathe light, to breathe slow, and to breathe deep. So I use the acronym LSD. Light is about the biochemistry, slow is about the respiratory rate, and deep is about optimal movement of the diaphragm. And I'm going to say one thing: you will never achieve mental health unless you get deep sleep. It is the missing component when it comes to depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and ADHD. I'm not saying it's everything, but I'm saying it's a vital component of it. How many people coming in through your door, they have mental health issues, they have depression, they have fibromyalgia, they have chronic fatigue syndrome, they have high blood pressure. We should start looking at sleep, and it's not just about sleep hygiene. It's not just about wearing blue light filter glasses, fine. Don't be looking into your screens late at night, fine. Have a cool and airy bedroom, fine. Don't drink alcohol or eat food, etc. That's not where it's at. We have to look at breathing patterns.
Tell us a little bit about what functional medicine in terms of what it is in terms of, should everybody be looking into working with a functional medicine doctor? I mean, is it for everyone, or is it only if you're having certain challenges that you're noticing coming up?
That's a great question. I think my knee-jerk reaction to that question is say, yeah, everyone should have a functional medicine doctor. And it's not that we're all dealing with, complex medical problems or time-consuming or deep medical problems. But I think having a physician, regardless of whether they're coming at this from a functional medicine perspective, integrative medicine, naturopathic medicine, having a physician that's open to your value system, regardless of what you're bringing to the table in terms of a problem, I think is really, really great. And so when I was practicing primary care and I had my integrative tool bag and I had my functional tool bag and I had things to offer, if somebody came to me and said, I'm having heartburn, I could say, well, okay, here's, 5 or 6 options. Anything from, hey, let's treat this with an H2 blocker. Let's, work on your diet. Let's use ginger. There were lots of options. And I think that that's really the most important thing, is just to be able to say, like, what do you want for your own care, and find somebody who can provide you with options and teach you about your problem. Because I think that's the other thing, is the root word for doctor is docere, which is teach, to teach. And we're supposed to be teaching our patients about their health and how they can be healthier. That's really what medicine was intended to do. So not giving them the opportunity to understand things in depth and really be able to participate and collaborate in their care, I think is what's missing from healthcare.
Docere, teach.
Docere,
I like that.
to
but
teach.
And I like how you also mentioned, hey, it's kind of, what is your journey? Like, this isn't just physicians, it's also as you as the patient, right? You have to empower yourself and be interested in learning more, instead of just, you don't want to look that far into things, or you just give me the thing. So there's this kind of dynamic, right? Where we have a dynamic.
And I want people to hear me. This is not a trashing of traditional healthcare. This is not a throwing out the baby with the bathwater. I have been the recipient of incredible interventions in traditional healthcare. I've had orthopedic surgeries. I've had drugs that have helped my rheumatoid arthritis. So this is not anti-traditional healthcare. This is just understanding that there are limitations to that method, and that we should be able to enhance that and add to it, not necessarily like take it out of the picture.
What would you say are some of the signs and symptoms that someone might have that would indicate, okay, they should look into this, or look at a bigger picture holistically or functionally? Something might be going on with hormones, adrenals, thyroid.
Yeah, there's nothing like a 10-minute office visit when you come into that doctor's office and say, I know I just feel off. If you want to see a traditional physician light on fire, just go in there and say, I just feel a little off, because it's just, it could go in 15 million directions, right? But I think asking for help when you start to notice things about yourself, like, I'm tired when I shouldn't be tired. Like, I've been sleeping 7 to 8 hours, 10 hours, 9 hours, 8 hours, and I still don't feel well. I'm trying to do my exercise and it's just not working for me. The hormonal stuff, like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, may be a little bit easier to understand. My periods are off. I'm having night sweats or hot flashes. My hair is changing. My libido is down. I have vaginal pain with intercourse. I just don't have the stamina that I used to have. I think those are maybe a little bit more obvious sometimes to us, but the adrenal ones and the thyroid ones, the sluggishness, like, I'm gaining weight and all of a sudden I have a poochy belly, and what the heck? I'm supposed to be eating well. I'm eating good stuff, and I still have this weird thing in the middle of my belly that wasn't there before. And, So it's all these kind of strange transformational symptoms, I think, that point towards a potential hormonal cause.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Like, oh, I just feel off, but what you're saying is it's almost a sense of, hey, I'm doing everything right, but it's still things are looking or feeling.
Yeah, I still don't feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's kind of get into it. Let's talk hormones, because it seems like something we should have learned about in school, at least to better understand ourselves. And maybe we got a quick overview, but we just sort of dismissed it and never thought about it again. But obviously our hormones, they can rule our daily life, because for me,
they do.
My energy was off, right? I thought, oh, maybe my adrenals are shot. That's kind of a buzzword these days, but I had plenty of sleepless nights taking care of a baby at that time, kind of burning the candle at both ends. And maybe there's a quick fix. I said, take some supplements or what I should do. But what are some of the signs and symptoms that maybe your hormones, adrenals, thyroid, this interconnection, something needs attention? I know I shared a little bit about some of the things I was experiencing. Are there any, like, these are the markers, or these are the things that you should look further?
Yeah, I think there's some. So if I think about the adrenal glands specifically, because I think that is probably the area where in traditional medicine, if you go to your family physician, this is when I say no man's land, I mean, literally, like, people just don't understand the adrenal function and how cortisol manifests in the body. So some of the classic symptoms that I see that are related to the adrenals are feeling tired and wired. So the person who is going to bed at 9-10 o'clock and is exhausted as heck. I mean, like, they are just like crawling to the bed, and then they're laying in the bed with their eyes wide open. So they're like, I'm so tired, but I can't sleep. That is a classic adrenal symptom. The other one is waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and can't get back to sleep. That is the other one that just goes ding, 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 ding for me, because what's happening at 3 a.m. is your diurnal cortisol rhythm is happening. You're spiking your cortisol from 3 a.m. to about 7, 8 in the morning is when cortisol rapidly rises. So people who are sensitive to their cortisol at 3 a.m. will just snap awake and their eyeballs will just pop open. And sometimes they'll actually be in sort of a fight or flight, like their heart will be pounding and they'll be like, "What did I just have a bad dream? Like, what happened?" Where they're just a surge of cortisol that's coming out of them. So those are two classic. When somebody tells me those two stories, and you'd be surprised how often that actually people literally say those words, I'm like, okay, that's adrenals. Unexplained weight gain, especially around the middle of the body, because that is where cortisol likes to lay down protective fat. Cortisol is saying, hey, if you're going to run from tigers all day long, I better give you some extra fuel to have in case you actually don't make it. You have to go another 10 miles. I'm going to give you some extra stuff. And that's evolutionarily protective to put it around your organs so they're protected, right? So that middle of the body weight gain. And then just an inexplicable fatigue. The fatigue that is just like, this is like next level fatigue. And I feel physically tired. I feel mentally tired. My brain is foggy. I forget stuff. This isn't me. Like, I'm not this person. That is another really classic symptom. The thyroid stuff is, all of that plus, the hair falling out. I can't lose weight. You may have some coarsening of the voice. Your skin changes. Your nails can change. It can affect your menstrual cycle. It can affect your libido. And then all of the sort of the female hormone stuff, male hormone stuff is the menstrual cycle for women, the hair growing in weird places, my breasts hurt, just my migraines are off the wall. There are so many symptoms that are attributable to the hormone picture.
Yeah. Well, and you put it into some language I think everybody can understand, or at least relate to. Tired and wired, foggy and frazzled.
Yeah,
and of course, you're not running from the tiger. You're sitting at your desk all day. So I
know. It just feels a little counterintuitive, right? I think this is why being able to heal the adrenals and ultimately get to exercise really helps a lot of people.
And I'm sure people are curious, okay, where do I get tested? How do I get tested? Because if I walk into, let's say, my traditional doctor's office and I'm like, hey, I want these tests. Like you said, you might only get one part of it tested, or you may not get the entire picture that you really need, or the test might come back. And then
Yeah, this is where so much dismissing happens in healthcare. So if you go into the doctor's office and you're fully armed with a full thyroid panel and you go, hey, I think I have thyroid problems and I want this done, you're going to get poo-pooed. Yeah, you don't need, I don't believe in T3. We'll do a TSH. So I can't tell you how many people just like beat their head up against the wall because physicians just won't cooperate with your knowledge base. And I'm telling you, this is the age of information. People are smart. My patients are smart. They teach me stuff. So we need to listen to each other. So where do you get this testing done? This is all in the realm of functional medicine. It's not impossible to do on your own. There are some testing companies that are consumer facing that you can actually order test kits. The problem is that this stuff tends to be really, really detailed and not easy, intuitive to understand. So having a partner, a functional medicine doctor, integrated medicine doctor, partner with you to help you understand your information. So if you go to a functional medicine physician, everything that I just talked about is our bread and butter. So you're going to find that, yeah, we're going to give you the test kits that you need to be able to do the things that you need. And it's not always the same approach. It's not going to be like, oh, every potential adrenal patient comes in and they get 1, 2, 3. No, we're going to personalize it. And it just sort of depends on your symptoms and what's going on with you that would determine which testing that you need.
Well, I hope you enjoyed these holistic nutrition and wellness tips. I know for me, even though I've been living a life of wellness for almost 2 decades now, I still find that I have to adjust and really make these slight little tweaks so that I can really stay on the path of wellness. Like right now, personally, I've been following my circadian rhythms and really getting out in the sun first thing in the morning. I've also been paying a lot of attention to my energy levels and incorporating tons of vegetables while just listening to what my body needs. So I think there's an opportunity for us to always pay attention and take in more tips and really make sure that we're feeling our very best. And wellness is a journey. It's not a destination. And I believe it keeps evolving as you evolve. So I look forward to all of us evolving together in the new year ahead here on Live Well, Dream Big. I'll see you next time. Thank you for joining me for today's episode of Live Well, Dream Big. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. And I want to invite you to take your next step toward living well and dreaming big by downloading the Live Well, Dream Big lifestyle book. It's the ultimate guide to becoming your best self and living life on your own terms. You can grab your complimentary copy by going to the link in the show notes or heading directly to iawpwellnesscoach.com/guide. That's iawpwellnesscoach.com/guide.